Our next speaker for the morning is Richard Orme. We're going from Rick to Richard. Richard Orme. Richard is the CEO of the DAISY Consortium, and before assuming the helm of DAISY last year, Richard worked for 2 years with Dolphin, and prior to that had a long career with RNIB in the UK in many different roles, one of which was head of accessibility, where Richard led RNIB's initiative to improve access to technology, television, and e-books. So, the title of Richard's topic today is Reading Apps and Accessibility, User Requirements and Helpful Guidance. So, the floor is yours, Richard.
Thank you, Margaret, and thank you, Rick, for setting up this next talk so well. I'm going to jump on something that Rick spoke about, which was about holding the feet of app developers to the fire. Margaret, you just talked about what it was like to be a student these days. My first job was working as a lecturer in a college, and it was an agricultural college, and studying at the college was a blind farmer. And my job was to teach him computing before the days of PC and even screen readers. And I like to think that Mike's experience now, were he to go back as a student, would be so much better than he learnt at that college, because the accessibility was just so basic. And if we come back to last year, when I just concluded my course at Warwick University in the UK, we started getting textbooks. We were using VitalSource, and I know that those are accessible with a screen reader, so Mike would have a better experience today. Since, Rick, you talked about what got you started, I just told you that it was a FE college teaching a student who was blind. The final dissertation that I did for my degree, computer science degree, was developing perhaps one of the world's first touchscreen-based screen reading systems for children with profound disabilities. Back in the day when a touchscreen was something you hung on the front of a monitor and the speech was a chip you inserted into the computer. But these days, as we heard, Margaret, now I'm working at the DAISY Consortium. So a very, very brief introduction to the DAISY Consortium, which is this global consortium of organizations committed to equal access, information, and knowledge. So right at the heart of what we're discussing at the conference. And we've got members, we've got friends and individual supporters all over the world, and we have consortia in some regions too, and a special shout out to the Swedish DAISY Consortium. And as you've heard many times during this conference, we're celebrating our 20-year anniversary, and many of you were with us last night at the restaurant to do that. So for some people, DAISY is a shiny silver disc. It's a talking book that goes into a player, and you might think, what relevance does that have to 21st century learning in the context of what Rick just spoke about? But we have three kind of key domains of what we work on within the consortium. We support the DAISY community, providing them with expertise and technologies to support accessible reading services all over the world. We work on extending the DAISY community, because there are many countries where they don't have accessible reading services. But most relevant to this talk, it's about enabling accessible mainstream publishing that's moving so fast. And so by supporting various mainstream publishers and content developers and the technology companies too, we move towards this era of born accessible publications. Now, if we think about the kind of numbers that we're talking about here, when I worked at RNIB, we were proud of when we produced between 1,000 and 2,000 accessible publications in a year. But when you move into the mainstream, the numbers just go off the charts. Now, I apologize for some of these dates, these numbers being a little bit dated, but in the UK, back in 2012, 99% of adult fiction titles were published available as an ebook. And that's several 100,000 titles. In terms of usage in 2012, 1 in 5 adult fiction books that were bought as an ebook. And in March of 2013, 24% of British adults downloaded an ebook. To come more up to the present, Kobo, I just looked this morning, they have over 4 million ebooks available. And Amazon have 4.4 million ebook titles for the Kindle, and in the UK, more than 43,000 of them have human narration. So by enabling the mainstream, by enabling mainstream publishing and reading, we broaden access so dramatically to the world of literature and learning. And the beneficiaries of inclusive publishing, I have some images up on the screen. I have an elderly lady wearing dark glasses, sitting, smiling, using an iPad. I have a young man who has Down syndrome, engaged in learning using a tablet computer. There's a picture of a blind person in a street scene with a pair of headphones using a smartphone. And there is a picture of a close-up of someone reading a braille display with their fingers. An inclusive publishing and an accessible reading experience will enable all of these people to get access to content when it's published, on the day it's published, in the same terms. So publishers are doing a great job on creating accessible content. There's some way to go on it, but they're on that journey, as we heard, and will have heard in many sessions. But great content needs accessible reading systems. This is the other kind of side of that coin. Often mainstream content is tied to a specific reading system. So whilst there are some great specialist products available, often someone has to use the reading system that's provided by the vendor. They don't have that choice. And so accessible content isn't sufficient if the reading system is not usable for someone. They're two sides of the same coin. So the DAISY Consortium, in collaboration with partners, is advocating for accessibility features to be implemented in a wide range of mainstream reading systems. And our goal is to ensure that fundamental accessibility features are supported by these systems. And this empowers customers to buy from responsible companies. If you're a college that needs to buy some learning content, it's a responsibility for you to ensure that the system you buy is accessible to people. If you're a library service, you need to take this into account as well. So by using the power of the market, we enable mainstream reading. And the principles of the testing, then, are that all users should be able to consume the content of a document or title by being able to adjust the display, such as maybe changing the font and the size and the color combination, to be able to read the text with a screen reader, or maybe, if the application is self-voicing, to use text-to-speech that way, to be able to read the text with refreshable braille display. And it should also support reading systems for persons with dyslexia and other disabilities. So, what was developed were the fundamental accessibility tests, and this was a collaborative effort between IDPF, BISG, and the DAISY Consortium. And through this effort, we provide an extensive set of tests with a documented process for executing the tests and compiling those results. And there's the opportunity to participate in creating helpful guidance for students, accessibility specialists, librarians, developers, and content creators. Up on the screen, I have a screenshot of how the tests work. So there's a bank of tests. They actually load up as an EPUB document. And the one that's up there now is test reading 210. It reads that all text should be read in the proper order. And it's got some sample text that's provided in here. And it, in fact, has paragraph 2 positioned to the left of paragraph 1. You know, in a document with some complex layout, the reading order will need to be defined. And the test here means that the person who's evaluating the reading system would load up this document, go through it with the appropriate assistive technology, and ensure that paragraph 1 is read before paragraph 2. And they would simply indicate whether this test is passed or failed. Another example. This is reading test 310. There's an image on the screen, and not visible, but that image has alt text to it. And the test criteria are: ensure that the alternate text for the image is available, and it tells you what it should read. So if you're reading it with your assistive technology and it just says image, then it's not a pass. And if you read it with your assistive technology and it says Moby Dick with a sailor in his mouth and several with harpoons hanging on him, blah, 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 you know it's passed. So by going through this methodical set of tests, the look at visual characteristics, the reading, but also file management, so to be able to explore your bookshelf and open a title, you build up a picture of the accessibility features of the reading system. If you want to know how to get started with this, the website is there, www.epubtest.org. And there's instructions there for evaluators. And then by exploring through the test, it gives you a framework for how you can sign up and become evaluator. But also the test documents are there for you to look at those. You can also look at the results, and I have a screenshot here of how the results are presented. We had a similar slide in Rick's presentation. It shows the names of the reading system. It shows the assistive technology, if appropriate, that was used with it, its version number. And it gives scores, and they're broken down into the essentials, and the visual adjustment tests, and the media overlays, if there is support for media overlays within the reading system. So the notion here is that someone who wants to use a reading system and understands the requirements they have are able to go onto this site and check out whether or not those needs are accommodated. It provides someone who's looking to purchase or procure a reading system can look and see where that reading system is across different platforms in terms of these fundamental accessibility features. But possibly most critically, what it does is provide the developers of the reading system to be able to see where they're currently not meeting the expectations of these fundamental accessibility tests and spur them on to do more. And maybe through what Rick said, this has been the process with VitalSource. It's helped them know where they need to get to on these most critical issues. And the test results can be dug into then, so there are those percentages, but in fact they can be presented by test criteria themselves. So up on the screen now I have the section that's about navigation, and we've got things like the table of contents navigation, whether or not you can navigate by pages, to be able to navigate by the reflowed page number and so on. And then really helpfully down the right-hand side of the page, it tells whether or not in the test results that's supported, that's shown in green with the text, or if it's not supported, where it's red and shown as not supported in the text as well. Now, what we want to do really with this set of tests that's up there is to scale this up. A lot of the systems that have been tested so far are those that are known about by those that are closer to this process. And what we want to do through an initiative, which is the DAISY Inclusive Publishing Initiative, is that we want to focus on both the content and the reading systems. This initiative is funded by the Google Impact Challenge, and we're working really hard to create a baseline for accessible EPUB, and testing tools that help the producers of the EPUB to know whether their files are good enough. But we're also addressing the reading systems too. And so as part of this initiative, we want to scale up the testing and drive forward the whole range of reading systems that have these fundamental accessibility features. So the call to action then, in closing, are for you to check out the existing test results. See whether or not the reading systems that you work with, or that you recommend, or that you're considering, are they up there? Have they been tested? Have they got some room to improve? And communicate with the vendors of that. If you develop reading systems, check out whether your system has been evaluated, and if not, evaluate it. Do it yourself. See where you fall short. And we're looking for prospective moderators, evaluators, and testers, and you can use the site to sign up, and there's a whole set of criteria and roles up there too. We really want this to drive forward mainstream reading systems across the world. So as part of our initiative, we'll be identifying the most critical ones in different markets and language groups to push that forward. And in order to do that, we need your help. We need help from people all around the world who understand which are the most important reading systems and have the language skills and the context to know how to do that testing. And lastly, these are the fundamental tests. These don't cover all of the issues. These are the minimum requirements, really. And in fact, we may not have got everything right in these tests, so it's still a work in progress. This is a conversation. And as Rick knows, we're working what would be the next level that goes beyond this, that starts to deal with the maths and scientific content as well. So we'd love to hear about your comments and your suggestions too. So please visit the site, have a look at the results, get involved and help us in this important effort. Thank you.
Great stuff as ever, Richard. Any questions for Richard? We have one, or are you just stretching out there? I think that's just doing a thorough stretch as opposed to a question. I don't see any hands up. I'll give you a question. If, as an organization for the blind, it's our responsibility, as Richard alluded to be advocating with the publishers and with the people who are making the reading devices to make them fully accessible at source. If I'm a publisher and I want to do the right thing, be a good corporate citizen, this baseline document that you're talking about is going to give me what I need to say that I am, for want of a better word, DAISY okay?
That's one kind of brand that's been used in the past, but yes, the baseline has been referred to in terms of the content, right. But to some extent what I've talked about here, and it's been around for a while, is the baseline for the reading systems.
Right.
You talked about devices there. These are typically apps, and what I didn't mention is that maybe the information from your organisation, Margaret, often it can be side-loaded into these mainstream apps too, and some people, they will choose to use this type of system too. Right. So yeah, this is all about setting out and being clear on what the baseline is. We need people to reach that baseline.
Right. For whether it's content or reading devices.
Content and for reading systems, and then we'll have a conversation about going even further.
Yeah. Great presentation. A little gift for Richard. You got to hand them out yesterday, you get to receive one today.
Margaret, thank you.
Thank you.